This is the most elite Special Forces unit in the United States, a unit that can be described as undefeated in every battle. Yet in this mysterious forest, the Special Forces unit encounters serious trouble. An unknown enemy relentlessly stalks them. The soldiers attempt to fight back, only to discover that the attacker is far beyond their comprehension.
What the hell was that thing?
I don't know. He's fucking shooting everybody.
What do you mean? Is it from another planet? It's definitely not from this planet. So what exactly is hidden within that forest? Can the Special Forces unit escape the deadly situation? The story must begin with a mission that was completely wiped out. A transport convoy belonging to the 13th Division of the U.S. Army suffered an unexpected mechanical failure while carrying out a mission. The convoy was forced to stop urgently for repairs. To guard against a possible ambush by enemy armed forces, headquarters immediately dispatched an engineering team to provide support. Coincidentally, the repair engineer Anders, who was assigned to fix the malfunction, was the older brother of the convoy's commander. Anders quickly inspected the damaged parts of the vehicle and determined the cause of the failure. He then began the repairs. Meanwhile, his younger brother talked about his future plans. He frankly stated that after this mission was over, he wanted to apply for Special Forces selection. He hoped his brother would join him.
That ship has sailed. Rangers are fucking hardcore. I'm fucking old. You're fucking ugly.
No, I checked the cutoff. We're good.
Bro, you want to be a ranger, go be a ranger. You don't need my permission.
I wanted to do it together. Like we promised each other.
Bro, we were 18. We also said we're gonna start a thrash band.
Come on, man, just imagine. You and me, getting our ranger scrolls, fucking running across the tarmac, Black Hawks, first boots on the ground.
All right. You're in, I'm in.
You promise?
Always.
But just as the convoy was about to continue its journey, a sudden disaster struck. When Anders regained consciousness after blacking out, everything around him had turned into ruins. The destroyed vehicles were spewing thick black smoke. The air was filled with the pungent smell of gunpowder. A sharp piece of metal had pierced through his leg. Gritting his teeth, he pulled it out with his own hands and tried to stand despite the intense pain. Only then did he realize that aside from himself, the other two teams had been completely wiped out. He ran to look for his younger brother, but unfortunately, the boy was no longer breathing. Time passed quickly. 2 years later, Anders arrived at the training base of the 75th Ranger Regiment, the most famous and legendary Ranger unit in the United States. The reason he dragged his injured leg all the way here was to fulfill the unfinished wish of his younger brother. All soldiers participating in the selection had to endure 8 weeks of hellish training. The goal was not only to push their physical limits to the extreme, but also to strip away each person's true nature under overwhelming pressure. There's no shame in quitting. Most of you will drop out soon enough.
Rangers are the spearhead of the United States Army. We are first on the ground every single time. The fate of our nation and allies depends on our expertise. Do you understand me?
Yes, First Sergeant!
Attention! Rangers lead the way!
All the way!
Welcome to RASP.
Come on, candidates! Let's go, let's go, let's go! Let's see what we got.
From the very first day, the training was overshadowed by the threat of elimination. Human endurance was constantly pushed to the limit, and every day someone packed up and left in silence. Yet despite his old injury, Anders consistently ranked at the top.
You really have fun tonight?
Rangers lead the way! 77, 84, 142, step forward. You are non-selects. Pack your bags.
For weeks of brutal training had eliminated nearly half of the soldiers, but that was still not the end. The real test was only just beginning.
Hey, slow down, Superman. Making the rest of us look bad.
Anders displayed exceptional talent and willpower. He could always rely on his previous experience to complete almost every test flawlessly. The admiration from the other trainees grew stronger by the day, especially after they learned that he had once served in the Sparta unit and had been awarded the Silver Star. Everyone looked at him with respect, but Anders seemed completely indifferent. No one knew that every time he carried his rifle onto the training field, the horrific scene from 2 years ago would replay in his mind. The image of his younger brother lying lifeless in a pool of blood was the most painful memory of his life. One noon, while they were eating, a breaking news report suddenly appeared on television. A meteor was entering the orbit of the solar system. But what puzzled astronomers was that as it approached Earth, the celestial body began to show signs of structural separation. Moreover, the cracks were extremely uniform. Therefore, some experts speculated that the meteor might not be a single solid mass, but rather a cluster of multiple smaller celestial bodies combined together. Anders stared intently at the news report. Just then, the military commander summoned him to the office.
Unfortunately, First Sergeant Torres and I are going to recommend that you retire from the course effective immediately. You're done.
Although his performance had been nearly flawless, the instructors had noticed that his mental state was extremely unstable. He constantly avoided contact with his teammates. Such behavior was incompatible with a unit that fought as a team. The commander advised him to take some time off, even to see a psychologist. He handed Anders a voluntary withdrawal form from the selection course, but Anders firmly refused to sign it.
You get the fuck out of my office.
Time quickly advanced to the 8th week. Without any surprise, Anders made it into the final evaluation round. As long as he completed the last challenge, he would officially become a ranger. But this life-or-death test that would determine his fate was far from simple. 30 minutes later, the assembly whistle blew. A new simulated mission was issued. A fighter jet carrying out a top-secret mission had been shot down in enemy-controlled territory. To prevent core technology from falling into enemy hands, the trainees would be inserted by Black Hawk helicopters behind enemy defensive lines. After locating the wreckage of the aircraft, they had to destroy it immediately, then proceed to Phase 2 of the mission. All personnel were required to move 8 kilometers to a village to rescue the captured pilot. The difficulty of this mission had been significantly increased. The target area was surrounded by nearly 360-degree defensive coverage. In addition, the trainees' rifles were equipped with blank-firing devices, meaning they could not use live ammunition. They could only rely on coordinated tactics and close-quarters combat to complete the mission. Meanwhile, the instructors would play the role of enemy forces and could launch attacks at any moment. In the end, Anders was appointed as the team leader. He understood the commander's intention clearly. Although he was extremely angry inside, he still nodded in agreement. Not long after, 2 Black Hawks took off one after another. They flew over rolling mountain ranges, skimmed across deep valleys, and finally landed at the designated insertion point. This location was nearly 20 kilometers from the crash site. The trainees quickly regrouped after landing and began advancing toward the crash site according to plan. At that moment, everyone believed this was nothing more than an extremely realistic exercise. What they did not know was that real danger had already descended in silence. After a day of grueling marching, the team finally crossed the red boundary line as planned. Anders ordered a 20-minute halt. He and the deputy team leader were responsible for perimeter security. They had to reach the objective before dawn in order to have enough time to complete the mission. But at that very moment, a strange sound suddenly echoed through the area.
Seriously, what the fuck was that?
Artillery fire, baby. Cadre probably clocked us sleeping.
They were convinced that the instructors were deliberately trying to disrupt them. But Anders was not as optimistic as the others. He immediately ordered everyone to pack up and withdraw as quickly as possible. Early the next morning, the team finally approached the area where the fighter jet had crashed. Anders raised his binoculars and carefully observed the surroundings. Very soon, he spotted a downed fighter jet lying beside a small stream about half a kilometer away. But what was strange was that he could not recognize the specific model of the aircraft at all. The deputy team leader observed for a while as well, and in the end could only conclude that the training unit had truly put in a tremendous amount of effort, even going so far as to modify an entire mock aircraft. Anders still had his doubts, but he quickly laid out the tactical deployment. 4 trainees were assigned as the demolition team, responsible for carrying explosives to the aircraft and destroying it. The rest spread out around the perimeter to provide security, ready to respond to any ambush by the instructors at any moment. But just as everyone was about to move out, one team member suddenly voiced an objection. He had discovered that the aircraft's position was off by several hundred meters from the exact coordinates listed in the mission report. The military had always been extremely strict. How could it possibly make such a low-level mistake? At the same time, the team's radio communications were suddenly cut off, receiving only strange bursts of static. Some believed this was yet another interference tactic arranged by the training unit to test their adaptability. Anders did not hesitate for long. He still ordered everyone to proceed according to the plan he had just laid out. Very quickly, the demolition team successfully approached the aircraft and attached C4 explosives to its fuselage. The other team members spread out to different positions. Anders led several men along the downstream side of the river, attempting to locate any training unit members who might be lying in ambush, but in the end they found nothing. Even so, he did not dare lower his guard. At that moment, a flock of birds suddenly burst out of the forest. Anders followed their flight path with his eyes and unexpectedly noticed a glaring metallic reflection among the vegetation not far away. He immediately handed temporary command over to Deputy Team Leader Obrake and, rifle in hand, quickly advanced toward the source of the reflection. Before long, Anders had pushed deep into the dense forest, but the sight before him caused him to freeze instantly. On the riverbank lay the shattered wreckage of a fighter jet. Anders' heart sank. He immediately realized they had targeted the wrong objective. The wreckage before him was the true target of the exercise. He quickly turned to inform his teammates, but he was already a step too late.
Fire in the hole!
As the smoke and dust from the explosion gradually cleared, the 4 members of the demolition team were stunned to discover that the other aircraft remained completely intact, undamaged, without even a single dent. Everyone stared at the scene in disbelief, but in the very next second, the massive object suddenly began to move. Its mechanical structure unfolded layer by layer and then reassembled, ultimately transforming into a gigantic suit of black armor. Immediately afterward, several blue beams of light swept across the forest, locking onto all the trainees scattered throughout the area. Everyone panicked and fled deeper into the woods, only to find that ahead of them lay a bottomless ravine. Anders was about to lead them in another direction when a black sphere, no larger than a fist, suddenly flew in a parabolic arc and landed precisely in front of them.
Oh, shit. Get down!
No one knew how much time had passed before Anders finally stopped rolling. Suppressing the intense pain, he struggled to prop himself halfway up, only to discover that all his teammates were lying sprawled on the ground, appearing to be severely wounded. The sight instantly reminded Anders of that day 2 years ago. Forcing himself out of his daze, he gritted his teeth and reset his dislocated arm, then quickly directed the lightly wounded to tend to the injured and prepare for whatever danger might come next. At the same time, he gathered information about the situation from the survivors. The demolition team had been completely wiped out, and the communications soldier carrying the radio had gone missing during the chaos. Anders' expression immediately darkened. Without communication equipment, they would have no way to call for help. In the end, they might very well be trapped to death in this dense forest. At present, Anders was the only one who had been farther from the blast zone, so his injuries were less severe. Without hesitation, he threw off his rucksack and began climbing back up the cliff face, determined to retrieve the critically important radio. The destructive power of the enemy's weapon far exceeded their understanding. The ground struck by the attack had been scorched black by extreme heat, and near the deep craters lay the mangled remains of their comrades. Anders felt his composure waver again, but he quickly forced himself to calm down. Lowering his body, he sprinted down the slope and carefully searched along the riverbank. Finally, among a field of shattered rocks, he found the communications soldier who had been carrying the radio. Unfortunately, not only had the soldier long since stopped breathing, but the communication device had also been completely destroyed. At that very moment, a heavy, suppressed sound of labored breathing suddenly echoed beside his ear. Just as he was about to move forward to help, the next scene sent a chill through his entire body. It was absolutely not something that current human technology could create. Cold sweat immediately ran down Anders' spine. He hurried back down beneath the cliff to warn the surviving teammates.
We need to move!
57's dead, man.
And so are we if we don't move.
172.
Dead too.
Hey, what about 111 in the radio?
Both gone. The thing's hunting us.
What the fuck is it?
I don't know, but it's moving.
What do you mean it's moving?
It's following our trail. Ditch your weapons, grab your ropes.
We need to get off this cliff.
Hearing this, no one dared to hesitate. They immediately used the ropes to continue descending along the cliff face. Deputy Team Leader Obrake had suffered a severe leg injury and was completely unable to move on his own. Therefore, the soldier with call sign 96 told Anders to go down first to provide cover, while he adjusted the rope and helped Obrake descend. But at that very moment, the compass in Anders' hand suddenly began spinning wildly. Only then did he finally understand why every time the mechanical monster approached, their radio equipment would completely fail. They immediately rushed upward, only to discover that number 96 had been sliced in half by a laser beam. Those scanning beams swept across the battlefield once again. Everyone pressed themselves tightly against the cliff face to hide, but Obrake's exposed leg was unfortunately left uncovered. In the next second, the scanning beam instantly turned a dangerous red. The forest terrain was complex and densely covered with vegetation, so the mechanical monster quickly lost its target temporarily. But after a sweeping bombardment, only 6 of them remained. Confirming that the mechanical creature was no longer in pursuit, Anders immediately ordered a halt on the spot. Still shaken, the team treated Obrake's wounds while speculating about what that thing could possibly be. Anders remained silent. Only after everyone had gradually calmed down did he voice his judgment.
It wasn't our location. 57 was right. Our cords were off. Whatever that thing is, it's got some kind of magnetic field, screwing with our compasses in close proximity.
And my compass was flipping out back there too.
The weapons in their hands were nothing more than scrap metal in front of that mechanical monster. Therefore, Anders immediately ordered everyone to discard excess equipment, carry the severely wounded Obrake, and continue marching. According to the original plan, they would head toward the village 8 kilometers away. The training unit posing as enemy forces was stationed there, and at this moment it was their only hope. But this stretch of the journey was destined to be extremely difficult. Not long after, the team was blocked by a fast-flowing river. Without hesitation, Anders jumped into the water and struggled across to the opposite bank to secure a rope. Then the others fastened Obrake onto a stretcher and prepared to pull him across. But midway through, the stretcher became snagged on something along the rope.
What? He's stuck!
Left with no choice, Anders had to return once again. At that very moment, however, the compass on the riverbank suddenly began spinning wildly. Everyone's hearts tightened instantly. Sure enough, in the very next second, the mechanical monster appeared behind them.
Christ, my Lord and Savior.
Amid the chaos, Anders' ankle became tightly entangled in the rope, and his body was dragged, leaving him unable to move. As he watched himself about to be crushed into pulp by the steel machine, in a split-second moment of life and death, he desperately cut the rope, narrowly saving his own life. But worse still, his figure was now completely exposed within the mechanical monster's field of vision. The machine armor speed was significantly reduced in the rushing water, so the team decisively let the current carry them downstream as they fled. Yet before they could get far, a waterfall suddenly appeared ahead. When Anders regained consciousness again, he discovered that he and his teammates had reached the lower part of the river. The one who had saved them was the teammate who had previously gone missing. The few of them lay on the riverbank, gasping for breath, discussing their next course of action. Anders still insisted on heading to the village. After a brief rest, the group continued advancing toward their objective. But when they reached the village, the sight before them nearly caused everyone to collapse. The entire village had been reduced to ruins. Everywhere were black scorch marks left by explosions. The signal tower had been snapped in half during the bombardment. But what plunged them into true despair were the mutilated bodies lying on the ground. They were the instructors who had been stationed there. Anders raised his head and looked toward the mountainside. A massive hole had been blasted through it. At that moment, he suddenly recalled the news report about the asteroid entering Earth's orbit. Everything finally became clear. The monstrous machine had fallen from outer space. After tearing through the mountainside and the village, it had landed precisely in the area where they were conducting their exercise. After understanding everything, the remaining team members could only force themselves to regroup and continue searching through the ruins. Fortunately, they found an armored vehicle that was still operational. Working together, they cleared away the wreckage piled on top of it and did everything they could to drag the vehicle out of the debris.
That's it! We got it! Woo! All the way, motherfuckers! 1, 2, 3!
They then lifted Obrake into the vehicle. But just as they were about to leave, the compass inside the vehicle began spinning wildly again. Clearly, the mechanical monster had caught up. One team member quickly climbed onto the roof, only to discover that the machine gun's ammunition box was completely empty. Another immediately reacted, turning and running into a collapsed tent, where he found 2 crates of ammunition among the wreckage. But just as he was about to retreat, the ground began to tremble violently. It was obvious that everything was already too late.
15, get your ass moving!
The survivors quickly loaded the ammunition and unleashed dense gunfire at the mechanical monster. Brilliant sparks flew from its armored shell, yet not a single scratch was left behind. In contrast, the high-energy rounds fired by the creature nearly shattered the armored vehicle's plating. The metal let out a deep, heavy vibration. Seeing this, the driver immediately floored the accelerator. The armored vehicle sped wildly along the rugged mountain road. Just when everyone was on the verge of despair, the mechanical monster suddenly stopped.
Incoming!
the armored vehicle lost control and rolled along a steep slope. Fortunately, the driver reacted with lightning speed, wrenching the steering wheel hard and stabilizing the vehicle. No one had expected this old armored vehicle to be so sturdy. It had even survived the intense bombardment and managed to widen the distance from the monster. But just as everyone thought they had escaped the pursuit, the driver discovered in horror that the gearbox had been damaged in the explosion, could no longer sustain long-distance travel. And that was not even the worst part. In the very next second, the mechanical monster descended from the sky.
Shit!
A blue energy beam shot straight toward the armored vehicle. The driver swerved sharply to avoid it, but the enemy continued its relentless pursuit. If this continued, the vehicle would be destroyed sooner or later. The team members immediately grabbed their weapons and fought back. Amid the chaos, one soldier's arm was blown off in an explosion. Seeing this, Anders grabbed the grenade launcher and fired several rounds in succession at the monster, but still failed to cause any real damage. Instead, it only gave the enemy more time to accumulate energy once again. Under the violent impacts, the armored vehicle was nearly torn apart. Worse still, in the chaos, Obrecht's stretcher was flung off the cliff. Anders immediately changed tactics and fired grenades at both sides of the mountains. A large amount of rock tumbled down from above, finally slowing the robot's pursuit. Anders let out a breath of relief and shouted for everyone to stop the vehicle. But when he turned around, he discovered that the driver had already died from his severe injuries. Moments later, the armored vehicle exploded violently. No one knew how much time had passed before Anders regained consciousness. The armored vehicle had been completely destroyed, and none of his teammates were still breathing. Staggering forward, he approached the rock slide to check. Incredibly, the robot was left with only its lower half, which had been heavily damaged. Anders looked around for the remaining half. At that moment, in the distance, a long beam of light suddenly shot straight into the sky like a signal flare. He quickly hid behind a rock and observed. It turned out to be the remaining half of the robot, seemingly transmitting some kind of signal. Anders instinctively scanned his surroundings. Not far ahead, he spotted Obrecht's stretcher. He immediately rushed over to check and was relieved to find that Obrecht was still breathing. Just as Anders was about to move him away, another sudden change occurred. A loud explosion erupted from the wreckage of the armored vehicle. The thunderous sound echoed through the valley, instantly drawing the attention of the robot that was sending the signal. Without a second thought, Anders desperately dragged the stretcher in search of cover. Rain began to pour down harder and harder. The muddy mountain path became slippery, causing Anders to fall again and again, yet he refused to stop. Fortunately, Obrecht finally regained consciousness. Looking at the exhausted Anders, he struggled to say that he had once met Anders' younger brother. The boy had always said he wanted to become a ranger alongside his older brother. Hearing this, a surge of remorse and guilt flooded Anders' heart. He felt that he had not only failed his brother, but also the comrades who had sacrificed their lives. At that moment, the robot's blue scanning beam appeared once more. Anders' heart tightened instantly. The steel machine knew no fatigue and felt no pain like a human being. Meanwhile, Obrecht's life was slowly slipping away. At that critical moment, Anders spotted a crane in the distance. A reckless idea immediately formed in his mind. He quickly placed Obrecht in a safe location, then ran toward the crane. It was a quarry filled with heavy construction machinery and a large supply of explosives. As a combat engineer, Anders swiftly used his experience to devise a counterattack plan. Facing the alien robot head-on offered no chance of victory. The only option was to use the terrain and equipment to set a trap. He immediately activated the stone conveyor system, then fired a flare, successfully luring the robot away from Obrecht's location. Before long, the alien robot arrived at the quarry. Its blue scanning beam continuously swept across the area, searching for heat signatures. Just as the robot prepared to attack, the explosives buried underground detonated. The powerful shockwave instantly threw it off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Anders drove a loader straight toward it. Using all his strength, he rammed the bucket into the robot's body and pushed it toward the quarry wall. Rocks cascaded down from above, clogging the robot's heat vents. The machine began firing wildly. Finally, after severe overheating, it completely shut down, reduced to a heap of scrap metal. But unexpectedly, it activated its self-destruct mode. Fortunately, Anders reacted with lightning speed, leaping out of the loader's cabin just before the robot exploded. Yet before he could breathe a sigh of relief, countless spherical bombs rolled out from its fractured compartment. The next morning, Anders carried Obrecht on his back as he returned to the training base. But he discovered that the base had also been attacked by alien robots. Nearly half of the soldiers had been killed. At the same time, astronomical stations transmitted grim news. The original meteor had shattered into countless fragments and fallen across the globe. A war between humanity and an alien civilization had officially begun. When headquarters learned that Anders had destroyed an alien robot without heavy weaponry, they immediately convened an emergency meeting. After listening to his full account of the battle, they discovered that the robot's fatal weakness was remarkably simple. As long as its heat vents were blocked, those gigantic machines would overload and self-destruct. This discovery could become the key to humanity's counteroffensive. Anders finally received the recognition he had long desired. He officially passed the trial and became a true ranger. Not long afterward, he returned to the battlefield. The military established multiple elite units to carry out emergency rescue operations before the full-scale invasion erupted. Anders was appointed as the captain of a ranger unit, leading the vanguard in defense of Earth. But in the face of alien technology far beyond Earth's capabilities, could humanity truly prevail? The film ends here. Its visual effects and action sequences are highly impressive. Rather than focusing on grand interstellar battles, it centers on the desperate survival struggle of a small squad of soldiers. The alien robots create an overwhelming sense of pressure, and the explosions and chase scenes feel extremely realistic. The film does not attempt to build an exaggerated heroic image, yet it carries deeply moving themes of camaraderie. The mutual support among the soldiers gives the film both emotional weight and depth. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.